Let me open with a unique scenario that I'm sure absolutely none of you can relate to. It's late at night. You have no pants on. Because you're in bed, ready to sleep. Don't make this weird. Browsing social media when you see an advertisement for something that looks almost too good to be true. In my case, it was for a centaur waifu. This isn't something I ever realized existed, but I'm now aware it does. I'm not quite sure whether that's the stuff of nightmares or fantasy. I proceeded to download the game, install it, and ready to play with myself readied myself to play the next morning. Eager and filled with anticipation. The next morning I wake up, boot up the game, grab the lotion for my hands. They get really dry during the winter. And ready myself for an adventure unlike any other. Hey, my name is Stix and welcome to the first episode of Worst Gacha of All Time, a video series that is similar to my Worst Gacha Ever video series, where we aim to find the worst gacha of all time, beginning today with Book of Yog. Book of Yog is a 3D idle RPG that has you explore an enormous world, battle monolithic foes, all while not having to look at your screen and hoping your parent or girlfriend don't walk in. If they do, don't worry, just tell them you were watching hentai. Trust me, it's gonna be a lot less weird than telling them and trying to explain to them that you're playing a video game about sexy horse girls. Now let's go ahead and jump right in. Book of Yog lures you into the game with a beautiful splash screen. You wake up on the battlefield to... So you're in this battle, and you're introduced to some of the game mechanics, including but not limited to how your character automatically navigates the world on their own, how your character automatically engages enemies in battles on their own. This is of course a tutorial. Most, if not all gacha games force you into learning basic functions as if this is the first time you've ever played a video game before. After completing the tutorial, obtaining your very first story summon, experiencing some of the story, you'll find yourself greeted with the overworld map and all the features that comprise the game. Ra's Tower, the workshop, labyrinth, rankings, a cathedral, altar, guild, and more. Very few features are available to me at this point, however, as I do with every gacha game, I felt immediately compelled to investigate my character's gear. We can't go into battle without adequate weapons and armor. That's just silly. Before we discuss Book of Yog any further, allow me to thank my incredible patrons over on Patreon. Your guys' support is why I can continue to make videos like this every single month, and I deeply appreciate you all being there for me. Now back to the video. Every character has unique gear that they can equip. Weapons, armor, accessories. You can obtain gear via the main story, grinding certain instances. Gear naturally makes your character more powerful, but it isn't the only way to obtain additional power. Along with gear, every character has their own unique skills. Leveling skills makes clearing content much faster, and trust me, the first few hours might seem easy, but difficulty increases at quite a rapid rate beyond a certain point. The skills function differently for your character than the waifus that you recruit over the course of the game. Waifu skills are set, they can't be customized, only upgraded in power. Your personal character has entire skill trees that you're required to select between. Trees that increase your raw power, alter abilities. This adds a layer of depth that I didn't expect to see, but also doesn't provide much of any benefit since the AI is absolutely atrocious and doesn't use abilities. Allow me to take a moment here to explain. Upon gaining my freedom from the tyrannical tutorial, I opted to attempt some of the game modes, beginning with Ra's Tower. This is one of those endless floor game modes where every floor gets progressively more difficult than the last, rewarding you for every floor that you complete. It's also where you farm for materials to upgrade the levels of your characters. The entire tower is auto, including initiating the next floor, meaning that you can set it and forget it, coming back later to see just how far you've come, how much progress you've made, without actually making any progress yourself. The combat, both in Ra's Tower, both in the world itself, is auto. You field a group of characters comprised of the waifus that you obtain through summoning your male hero, and let the AI control the movement of your character for you. The world is void of life, uninspired. There exists waves of enemies to fight and treasures to loot. You'll engage enemies without provocation and completely bypass treasure found out in the field. This requires that you pay some attention to the game lest you miss the juicy rewards, which often aren't really anything worth physically engaging with the game for. While fighting enemies, you'll quickly realize that your character spams a single skill. In this instance, it was his auto slash. Investing into additional abilities felt completely pointless since the AI which you're pretty much forced into allowing to play for you, has no understanding of ability cycling. You can manually use your own abilities, but that requires you play the game, and let's be honest here, absolutely none of us want to do that. It completely defeats the purpose of playing an idle RPG. Abilities don't look too bad, they lack any real impact, they kind of feel weightless. You just see some flashy effects being thrown out for a few seconds, you watch your character repeatedly slash. After defeating waves of enemies, you'll encounter a boss monster that you eliminate faster than the trash monsters leading up to him. I found this to be very unbalanced, and it made the game feel fairly underwhelming. There was no concern for my survival. Boss monsters wouldn't be able to kill me, well, not out in the field anyway. They could in Ra's Tower after a few dozen floors if it didn't upgrade my levels, upgrade my gear, upgrade my skills. After playing for approximately an hour, I decided it was time for me to investigate the waifus. I was sold on the game after witnessing the Centaur waifu after all, and I admit I was not left unimpressed. The max rarity waifus all looked absolutely stunning. Every single one of them looked at least as high quality as a Genshin character or a Punishing Grey Raven character, yet as soon as you drop beyond max rarity, you begin to notice their lack of originality or care. The lowest rarity units weren't even animated. Rather, they decided to leave them unshaded, barely colored, two-dimensional flat images. Although they did have their own unique charm about them. Kind of reminded me a little bit of the old He-Man cartoon or Gargoyles. You can tell where the bulk of their funding went though. While the bulk of Book of Yog is comprised of auto combat in various different game modes, the story is only progressed through the main field. You'll navigate through different segregated zones, and after a time, see a very poorly written, poorly translated scene featuring the main cast of characters, half of which I didn't even realize were part of my group. This typically results in a boss encounter that is even weaker than the boss monsters found outside of the story, which left me wondering why on earth combat was a feature when A, you don't utilize it yourself, and B, there's no threat, no urgency, absolutely no challenge at all. You could enjoy the game just as much without the combat, and probably save yourself some time. I played the game for another couple hours, and I say played the game, but what I really mean here is that I let the AI play the game for me, and I made it to the outfit store. Some of these outfits looked even better than the base models of the characters. I probably spent too much time in there, but I couldn't pry my eyes off of what was available. If I had the money to spare, I would have invested the hundreds of dollars it would have cost me to obtain each and every single one of them. Although I wasn't really very lucky and never obtained any decent waifus in my time playing. I spent a ton of time pulling for characters and kept getting trashed that looked pretty hot, sure, but were little to no help at all. After ending the stream the first day of playing, I decided that I was interested enough to warrant additional playing in my spare time. So I logged in the next day and proceeded to spend several minutes trying to just close out of unnecessary windows that cluttered my screen and obscured the game. I spent more time clearing Ra's Tower. I hit over floor 100. I pushed further through the story. I leveled and upgraded my characters. I realized I unlocked a feature called the Foggy Coast, which allowed for me to challenge incredibly powerful boss monsters. These weren't the normal trash you find out in the world, in the story. These things also beat me faster than I used to beat my meat as a teenager. Suffice it to say, as is evidenced by what you're seeing on screen right now, I didn't last very long, kinda like when I was a teenager. The Labyrinth, however, was a very fun game mode. You moved through numerous rooms, with each room providing power-ups, new skills. This was a manual game mode with no autoplay at all. I think I spent about 45 minutes in here straight. It was genuinely entertaining. After 3 days of not playing the game, finally being able to play left me with a sense of joy. If only the game outside of this mode triggered the same emotional response from me. Sadly, that is Book of Yog. I really wish there was more for me to say about it. At the end of the day, it's an idle RPG, so you have to go into this with the expectation that you should have no expectations. The story was horrible, the combat could be fun, but the weightless effects just felt jarring. The AI using a single ability felt inhibiting, and abilities lacked variety in terms of effects. There wasn't a whole lot to do. The waifus looked good, or impossible to obtain. The difficulty increased far too rapidly, requiring you let the game autoplay for you for days before coming back and continuing. All in all, I did not have fun, and sadly, the Centaur waifu didn't really warrant any long-term investment, my time, into the game. Now, if Book of Yog isn't a gacha game that you're at all interested in, no problem, I have you covered with 2 different videos on screen right now.